Welcome back to a podcast that nobody's watched and ever will watch.
So that's the second session?
This is the second time.
Only one will be released. So
Only one.
knows
The first
we've
one,
talked before.
nobody's watched and no one will ever watch.
Maybe there's a reason.
I think the stuff we were talking about was so powerfully energetic, it just blew the cables. Or I just pushed the wrong button and it didn't record.
So
Which one will you go with? So, no, it's good to have you back, man. It's good to have another excuse to have another run at this and just talk about the cool things that we spoke about. We covered quite a lot last time, and it's like you want to replicate that, but you know what? We'll open the space for something new. And knowing myself, I'll probably repeat myself anyway, so it's all good.
Nobody was listening to the first podcast, so it doesn't matter.
It really doesn't matter at all.
Repeat.
Yeah. So how you been?
I'm good.
Yeah?
I'm pretty good, yes.
What have you been up to since the last time we had a chat?
Basically, I've been in Dubai, so I didn't go out like you.
Okay. No.
And did the classical stuff what I do when I'm in Dubai. I meet a lot of people.
Yeah.
And also have friends here. And obviously, I did some work.
Okay.
So I was reading some people.
Ah, you're reading.
Yeah.
More people. I have to say, when you looked at my face and you read what was going on in my face, I was quite shocked at how accurate you are. And the rebel part was the one that stuck out. Because it's 100% the case. I mean, with the fact we're doing a podcast in a cafe is already quite unique in itself. But that's how I've sort of journeyed through life, certainly not part of the mold. Felt very distant and much of an outsider. Because the thing about a rebel is you're not part of the pack, right? You're shaking things up. And I got into a lot of trouble growing up.
Can you remember what I said to you? So it was kind of a speed reading because everybody was like, or like Adam was like, yeah, say something about him. So, and you were sitting there and I didn't know you before, so I had to say something, right? So it was kind of a speed reading, no preparation, nothing. And I said to you, yes, you're a rebel, but also you need to know that every rebel will fall in the battle. You can't be the rebel forever.
Yeah.
And you need to know when to...
Yeah, well, not to rebel anymore. Well,
Exactly.
I've seen some of the rebels that are out there at the moment who are rebelling, and they're getting some attention in the press, because they're attracting it. Right? When you're rebelling against a certain authority, because what we're rebelling against, we're rebels against authority, rebels against your parents, and then your parents become the next authority figure, if it's people at your job, or the next hierarchy, in the government, or whatever it might be, the elites, anybody who you feel you're projecting the guardianship onto, because the relationship you have with your parents is what you have with the world, and the relationship you had with your childhood is what you have with life. So this is it's an ongoing unfolding of all the conditions that we've been taught to believe are true. So it's going beyond the illusions, and I'm still even on this path for like 10 years, I'm still going through the illusions, and making sure I don't become the rebel all the time. Because I have fallen many times being that rebel, But I'm in that stage of my life. It's if I come with love as a rebel, outside of the conditioning, with unconditional love, then I think I'm going to be attracting something very different into my life. Not the kind of normal rebel, but an unconditional loving rebel, if you will.
Yeah. So it will change to a certain degree the older you get. Because, for example, if we talk about like Chinese face reading, they put people they give people different face names. For example, if somebody has a king face, so a king is always fighting battles. A king is very often at a young age on a mission already. He wants to compete. He wants to, build his empire, so to speak. That's the characteristic. But a person who is then in his 40s, in his 50s, and still fighting the battles like a young king is probably not the best idea, because he needs to know, okay, maybe there's some younger kings, they should fight the battle, and I'm,
Delegation.
Exactly.
They're your princes and soldiers, and, you delegate because you want to expand your time. You don't want to fight every battle yourself, but at the same time, as a king, you need to lead by example. So when any time there is a battle, like I'm reading the Bhagavad Gita at the moment, I said it correctly. And, it's about Krishna, who is advising Arjun, right, to let go of the attachment to family and flesh and the ideas of, killing is a bad thing, which is quite interesting in this book because I've been, I read the Bible this year, and the New Testament's very much about love, and Jesus is, or Yeshua, his name is in Aramaic, is about love, unconditional love, and turn the other cheek. So it's a very different paradigm now reading the Bhagavad Gita, and the Quran, has its own, terminology. So sort of seeking the truth in all these different scriptures, like one extreme to the other extreme. And it's interesting, as, talking about Krishna and Arjun. Arjun feels more like the Jesus energy. He's looking to not fight his family, but he's forced to confront this big battle that he needs to go into, and he can't run away from it. He can't seclude himself because of the shame or the name. And Krishna is there to show him that, look, we're not attached to the flesh. You already know it better than me. I've just started the book. But not to be attached to it. This is the eternal spirit, which is a common theme in all of these books, is a part of the bigger. It's part of the universe. It's part of the absolute one who loves absolutely. And that is ultimately where we are governed by, the universal laws, and to let go of the idea of attachment to the body, to this 3D world that we live in. And that's ultimately what all the scriptures are, outlaying for us. But that's extreme, when you're going to battle, you're putting your body, up for potentially real pain, but not to be attached to that body. It doesn't matter if you're fighting your family, as it says in the Bhagavad Gita. Follow the rules of Krishna and liberate yourself and liberate them. Because ultimately, what's the philosopher's name? He said, death is like taking off a tight shoe. That kind of expanded feeling like we think we're from this world. We think this is what it's all about.
I've never heard that, but that's a very good one, I guess.
Yeah, and it's like that, we're waiting for that expansion. Who are we to say, no to somebody's destiny, into a battlefield based on what they're sort of speaking? I'm only a little bit into the book, so as we uncover it, I'll talk more about it, as we go along. So anyway, the kings.
Do you know what I like about you? Because you just said also last time.
I told you I'd repeat myself.
Huh?
I told you I'd repeat myself.
No, I mean, you said to me already last time that you study the Bible, went through the Bible, you study the Quran, like Bhagavad Gita.
Yeah.
So you go to like all the different, or to many different scriptures. And why is that? Because you wanna find something, right?
Yeah.
You wanna come up with your own opinion as well, right? You just don't wanna go to one scripture and then live 100% by it, not having your eyes on anything else.
Yeah.
So because that would put you in a position where you're kind of, I don't want to say ignorant, but you will have no real opinion because you have too less information. You just have one information stream coming in, right? So this
100%.
is what I really like,
Thank you,
what
man.
I figured out, because I'm pretty much the same.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
this is why I recognise you, man. One brother meets another brother, soul brother. I know you've been on your journey, and I want to explore that in a moment. Another word I've forgotten, which is part of the Bhagavad Gita. It kind of stems
The
from
Vedic scriptures.
the Vedic scriptures, and I'm going to explore the older scriptures in the Vedic. That will be next year's. I think this book's going to take me a couple of weeks probably. But what you said there is absolutely spot on. I was having a conversation earlier about seeking ultimate truth, because what I've done? I've seen myself on my old podcast before, which was kind of questioning reality. And I've seen a clip of myself talking, and I said something about religion. And I thought to myself, I heard myself say it. How can I say that unless I've read it? So I hold myself accountable by watching myself sometimes. It pops up. I don't watch myself all the time. Trust me, it's not something I particularly want to do.
So you said it before you even read it. Was that what?
Yeah, so I said something about religion.
Yeah.
And it was something like, the constraints of religion, the structure of it, and it's more about, spirituality, which is still the case. But how can I have any authority over it until I've read it? Religion, at least one book. So the next path, I guess turning 40 is something happens. Like, this wanting to understand and get out of the mist and the illusions of what people have to say. And at the end of the day, they may read it and have their own perspective anyway from it, because they may be biased. If you read the Quran, you're going to be biased because that is ultimately what your family believes in. So you're a Muslim, and so you take it on. But if you're not emotional, then you're not distorting reality. So if I can jump in from the New the Old Testament, the Quran, the Bhagavad Gita, the the next scriptures from whatever it might be, because I'm seeking the truth. I'm not looking to see one place and go, oh, they have the truth. Like we said before, whoever says they found the truth, run from them. And whoever's still seeking it, run towards them.
So what is actually the concept? Because there's a lot of concepts, right? Because we understand concepts as a human being, right?
Yeah.
What is the concept you really like
The concepts.
when it comes to spirituality?
You know, it's...
And I have a follow-up question to that.
Let's break down what we define concept. So, because just to identify here, the Alex who people like the past see me as, my family and, you know, my old school friends and things like this, you know, who think they know me because I was operating from the condition of Alex at the time. All the projections, all the programs, I was basically whatever everybody was projecting onto me, and I was a sponge growing up, so I was absorbing everybody else's energy and identity and their traumas and pains, as well as their, you know, condition of what love meant. So this combination of Alex was sort of a jittering mess, you know what I mean? And as you get older, you start to discern between the Alex is and who your higher self is. And this discernment is becoming, for me, a lot easier to see, because you're going beyond the illusions of, because I had to be an actor before. I had to play the role. I had to put the mask on. I mean, we're going to probably dive into the mask part. You know, I had to be these different roles because I was surviving, you know. And when you're surviving in that world, you need to put the mask on. And you don't even know it. You don't even know you're wearing the mask, you know. So discerning and having a very enlightened wife that I have, who's enjoying our delicious food here at the New York Cafe. Plugging our own cafe here, and
it really is.
And it really is delicious, right? So, getting to that place of being able to discern between Alex, the conditioned self, and the higher self. So when I'm now reading these books, that's what you asked me. What was the content, right?
The concept, yeah.
Concepts,
Yeah.
the concept of what it is. When I'm picking it up, I have no idea what I don't know what I'm looking for. I just know that I trust my higher self to see what it needs to see, to break other people's illusions that holds them emotionally to an old paradigm. Because I look at the Quran, right? And I think it's page 54, and I mentioned this before. At the bottom of it, it says, you know, Allah basically hates people who get into quarrelsome with their opponents. And the path into paradise is knowing your truth and not getting into debates with anybody. So when I see people on TV who operate from, you know, the Quran and under Allah, and they have their love and their faith and they want to share it, they're ultimately not listening or having to feel like they need to prove something, which is ultimately, the Quran is saying, you don't need to prove anything once you know the truth. There's nothing to prove. And my wife and I have been in a situation in a business setting that we had the truth about something. And the person we're trying to relay it to didn't want to hear the truth. Now, we thought they were just blind. But they were staying blind for a reason that they wanted to stay blind to. And it wasn't about having to present the truth to them anymore. We knew the truth, and we're going to act with our truth. You're not waiting for anyone to wake up. And the same thing goes in religious context, whatever it is. If you know your truth, you don't need to wait to convince anybody of it. You just move forward with providence. You know what I mean? And when you move forward with that much power and strength, that means you trust yourself and you trust the universe. And if it's meant to be, the universe will provide for you as you move forward, if it's aligned to your higher self. And my job now is just to get out of the way. Get Alex out of the way. Because anytime Alex gets in the way, he stumbles over, and it's usually when he falls over, because it's the ego. It's the conditioned.
How do you get out of the way?
You know what? The multicolored modalities. I've literally got the T-shirt to prove it. You know what I mean? It's the rainbow color of different modalities, because it's not one. There's not one thing. I'm about to do a webinar tonight to talk about health, which, you know, I just talk about my experience of health. I'm not a nutritional expert at all. We have a cafe and we talk to experts. We delegate to the other, you know, soldiers, let's say, you know, who are in their battle out there to bring the truth about nutrition to the world. And it's with Katia Bastani, who's a global rebirther who helps with rebirthing. So we went down that process. We did rebirthing. That's one modality. She's in that one modality. She's the top, like number one in the world, pretty much, to do with rebirthing. And I can see how one modality serves to a certain degree, but then you're missing out. It's like going to, you go to America and you go, have you ever been to Vegas or something like that? And they have these huge buffets. It's ridiculous. They have but you wouldn't just go to one area and eat one part of the food. You'd eat multiple different dishes of food, right? Because it's all there for you to try. So it's like getting stuck on one when you have this plethora of buffet of so many different modalities that each one is unique to unlock something specific within you. Why not give it a go? And I'm just somebody who likes to explore every single one of them as best I possibly can. Tell us a little bit, this is, what's your story? Where did you come from to where you are?
Yeah. I was talking before about the king phase, right? I have a part of it in my personality type. So what does a king do? I was running towards a goal. I wanted to build the biggest business in this country, then in the next country, then in the next country, then in the next country. And this was that was the only focus I had. But there is so much other things in me that I have interest in different topics. But I put everything on the side only to become successful. So I was running my life in a very unhealthy manner and very unconscious. So looking back, I was kind of empty, running after a goal, and once I hit it, I set another goal, and then I was running after the other goal, after the next goal. So actually, that was a rat race. How I did it, not the race, not like the business. That was not a rat race, but the way how I behaved in that, because I was compulsively driven, not consciously but subconsciously. It was a program was running me, and it needed a complete breakdown where I was not able to work for 2 years. I was not able to work out for 2 years. I had brain fog. Have you ever had brain fog?
Yeah.
Probably, right?
Yeah, of course.
I had brain fog for 2 years straight. So maybe there were a couple of days where I felt clear, and then I got back into brain fog. And it was that was a crazy, crazy time, because I had in this journey, there were so many moments I thought, okay, this will never end. I mean, I don't see the end. In some days it got a little bit better, and then it got worse again. And that for a pretty long time. So this changed me 180 degrees. And I think it was the best time in my life, because it made me change, because it was necessary to do a course correction.
Yeah.
Right? And it was not me, it was a higher power, so to speak, course corrected me. And it took me, let's say, 1 year to accept that. Because I was no, I go back to business. 1 week later, I will be back in business. And then 1 week later was super, was not able to do anything. I was okay, 2 more weeks, then 2 more months, then 6 more months, then 1 year, and then I got so tired of it, and I knew there is no way out like this. I need to change. So this started my entire journey, actually.
When you're going through a struggle like this, you don't know it at the time. You think this is it. Every storm passes, but when you're in that time, I remember going through something very similar, disastrous, where I could have clocked out. And I say clocked out, I mean, I didn't want to be here anymore. That Alex, that I didn't have any control over. It seemed to want to, it was attracting anything it possibly could to suffer, to feel miserable, And when you're in a place like that, where it seems to feel like you have no control over yourself, and your subconscious is familiar with suffering, and it keeps attracting that, you don't have... Your consciousness is like this, and your subconscious is, as we know, is far bigger, like the tip of the iceberg, and the subconscious is the iceberg underneath. When you're battling yourself, that is the biggest battle you ever go through. It's the 18 inches from your head to your heart. And it's that process. It's getting through all the layers of the conditions, and the fog head and everything else it's like your body's nudging you towards that enlightenment, towards your higher self. But when you're trying to go fast and you're trying to fight your way through towards success, what that is, we're doing everything counterintuitively. It's like we're backwards. From an outside perspective, people think we're backwards people. And you see in the authority in some countries right now, in governments, it looks like what they're doing is rather backwards. It's like you do everything that you probably shouldn't be doing. And we see people around us who are in that paradigm, who seem to be doing everything backwards, where they're actually harming themselves and they can't see it. Even if you're trying to help them, they're not willing to take that help because they see it as a sign of weakness or whatever they decide to project onto it. And you just watch people's demise. You know, they call it like the naked emperor. Everybody can see that the emperor is naked, but the emperor himself can't see he's naked. And we're all ultimately like that, you know, until you get a coach or until you find somebody who can look at you with compassion and love, and see you and tell you the truth. Because friends, you know, you are the people you keep. You probably heard this. Your friends don't usually tell you the truth, depending. I mean, my old friends would know how to because they're unconscious themselves, you know. So it's the kind of people you decide to hang out with. And sometimes you need to pay for the type of people to show you and tell you the truth so you can actually deal with it and expand and grow and you know, move on. But most people want to stay in the illusion. You know, stay there, stay familiar, stay comfortable, and convince yourselves with your friends that, you know, you're advancing, or, you know, it's okay. Let's stay in our problems. You know, I remember Tony Robbins saying it. You know, the West's biggest addiction is towards problems. You know, problems are the biggest addiction there is because it fulfills so many needs. You know, when you let go of those problems and you divorce the story, quote, then you're able to move on and go beyond the conditioned self, like the Alex, who was all of the combination of all that stuff and all of your combination that led you to your brain fog. So, yeah, I relate to that, man. I remember we mentioned it last time that, you know, you went through some other challenges.
Well, yes, there is a lot of challenges for a lot of people, right?
Yeah.
And but this is also what I like to talk with people that went through challenges, people that had a very intense life.
Yeah.
Because the more intense it is, the more we feel also alive, right? Even though it's like, oh my God, I want to get out of this situation, but still, there is so much potential for growth, and I'm after that. So, of course, I can say it now easily looking back, because when I was in the midst of it, it was not a pleasant thing. So what you mentioned, or I think you were pointing to my background with my brother, right? So I had a brother who was 1 year older than me, and he committed suicide. And this was, and I remember the day I got the notification, because we don't know exactly when it happened, but probably like we got the call a couple of days later, so we don't actually know it to the date.
Yeah.
But yeah, he was on drugs, and then he ended his life. He tried before already, didn't work out, and then the last time obviously worked out. And I can remember I was living at my mother's place, and I was sleeping, and I could hear that my mother was on the phone. So she talked to somebody, and I didn't exactly understood the words, but I knew what was talked about. So she got the message that they found my brother's body. And then she knocked at the door, and I pretended to sleep, but I wasn't sleeping anymore because I saw all that. I was aware of that. And then she opened the door and wanted to wake me up, and I still insisted not to show her that I'm awake, basically. And I waited until she closed the door and went out again. And then I just put on my clothes and rushed to the bathroom, fixed my hair, and then I went out. I left, jumped into the car, and went straight to work. Because looking back, because I didn't know how to deal with that situation, so it was like I was running away from it, right? And that was a crazy situation or experience. But also, I had then so I never worked through it until I was in Brazil many years ago. For 12 days in the forest with shamans. So we were drinking ayahuasca.
That will do it.
Every day for 12 days. And that was how many years after he passed? Probably 10 years or so.
Wow, okay. Wow.
Something like that. And I never processed it. I just was pushing it
course.
down, not to deal with it. And I think I was not even aware of that I was pushing it down. It was just my strategy to cope with it, right? But then when I was in Brazil and I was on ayahuasca, you can do whatever you want to do. It just happens, like I can remember I was sitting on a chair and it was in the middle of the forest. So there was no like kind of electricity. There was no fancy building. I was sleeping in a tent. Everybody was sleeping in a tent basically. So there was no kind of infrastructure. So and no place where I could put my luggage, like in a hotel. No, it was in my tent and I was sleeping there and have to dress and everything. So no mirrors. So I couldn't even. So when I flew there, I shaved as good as possible. And then I was at 12 days like this. And so the first session, I was sitting on the chair and I got the ayahuasca and probably about like 30 minutes, it kicked in and I had like a feeling my face, so you have your eyes closed, my face was like melting and circling. I was like, okay, that's crazy. But I was looking forward to it because the reason why I went there was one reason. I wanted to experience the worst that can ever happen, the baddest experience that I can ever have. And the reason was because I know I can grow stronger, I can grow through it and become a better person. So I wasn't like not nervous at all when it comes to the ayahuasca, what a lot of people are. But I was super nervous because of the animals there, because there were spiders, cobras, and all the other animals that could kill you, basically. So, anyways, I was in the first session, and this started with the face, and then I felt like a bush of roses with the thorns.
Oh yeah.
Come and rip my body apart.
Well, you asked for it.
Welcome. So that was the beginning, and then they call it in the force. So you're in the force when it's working through you, and then I was sitting there, and suddenly I started to cry, like crazy, and I was so sad, but I didn't know why, and I was crying, but without any noise. So I didn't cry how you can hear other people cry. I was like silent, but tears were coming down, my body was shaking. And this was the most intense emotion I've ever felt in my life when it comes to sadness. And I have no idea how long this was going on, probably half an hour, 1 hour, maybe longer. And then I could see my brother. So I could see my brother, I was connected with him, and through muscle testing, I navigated through the entire session, asking questions, and I didn't even know what muscle testing was before. So I just said to myself, okay, a yes is my knees go together, and the no is I'm calm. And this is how I communicated with him. So was asking how he's doing. Is he in limbus? Because people say if you commit suicide, if you end your life, you're kind of trapped in limbus. Yeah. I have no idea if that's true, but I got an answer, and he said, "Don't worry," and I was like, "Okay, but can I help you? Can I do anything to get you to the light or whatever it is?" And he said, "No, you can't do anything. I have to figure it out myself." With that sentence, I knew, or I think now, he's in limbus, because he has to figure it out on his own. So I'm not 100% sure, but that was just an experience. And then I went through, after the sadness, everything was good, I felt very good towards him, and I was like, there was happiness within me, love, to a point where I didn't even want to touch the grass with my feet because I was afraid to hurt another intelligence, because the grass, a tree, a fruit, I didn't see it the way I saw it before. It became an intelligence. It's not just a tree, it's not just wood, it's an intelligence. And this is how I saw it right after this session. And now the interesting part comes. So fast forward like 2 weeks, I was back in Austria again, and then Julia called me. Julia was his girlfriend, so he left behind her with a child. And she called me and she said, "Hey, what happened last Thursday?" And and I was like thinking, and it was exactly that day where I had the session. And I was like, whoa, okay, probably we need to meet because I don't want to talk to you about this on the phone because maybe you think I'm a little crazy. So, then she said, no, then I have to tell you something. I can't wait. So she's living in Vienna, and she woke up in the middle of the night, opened her eyes, and as I recall, I think she said she was going from the bedroom to the living room, and then she saw me. Then she saw me, and I was like, she told me, yeah, and I saw you. And I was like, what do you mean you saw me? And she says, yeah, you were sitting on a chair, and you were crying all the time without any noise. And I was like getting goosebumps. I was in the car, and I was like, I stopped the car, and I got goosebumps, and I was like, okay, no. What do you mean you saw me? Describe the scenario. And then she was like, you had dark shoes, black shoes, you had a gray long pant, and you had a white shirt on. And it was exactly what I was wearing. And then she said, and I not just even saw you, I felt everything you felt. And I was like, okay, that's sick. Now I have the first experience that everything is connected. Not just, before, if somebody asked me, do you think that everything is connected? Yes, of course. But that's not knowledge. That's
intellectual.
That's intellectual, exactly. But once you have an experience like this, then then that's wisdom, and you don't even need science to prove anything because you are the authority.
Didn't we speak about this, right? We mentioned it before, when you know your truth, you don't need to try to convince anybody anymore.
Yeah.
Once you see it, and there's atheists out there, there's people, there's, separation, and, when it gets to this point, and you're not the first person I've heard of something like this, it's incredible because it just upholds the fact that for us, this is what the New Earth is about, is understanding that we have a higher self that is connected to everything and everyone, that whatever deed and whatever we do leaves a ripple effect to a degree. It will come back to us and other people can feel it. Even if they don't understand it right now, they're trying to get to it intellectually. Like I got to where I got to because I was trying to get there, trying to feel it. But all I could do was intellectualize it because I was living in my head. So when I hear stories like this, it's a confirmation. We're not here to try to prove to anybody anything. We are all one. And there are countless of stories like this. And you can't prove these stories a lot of the time. And, people in science, they want to be able to record it. And if it's not evidence-based and it's not being through a peer test and it's not then it doesn't exist. Because that's the mind trying to understand what we can't make sense of a lot of the time, So your experience it's undeniable. Your experience and having this doesn't make it not true because it wasn't recorded. Yeah. It's true because it's true. This person who encountered you in this on the night where you were in a Brazilian rainforest somewhere, and she was home in Germany?
In Austria.
Austria, sorry. Two worlds apart. I mean, to describe to the clothes of what you're wearing is insane. I mean, I've had many different experiences that I would say this is why the book's coming together, because it feels like we just stepped into a different paradigm. And I think the 3D world and I say the 3D world, that's a conditioned world, the matrix, whatever you want to call it, those who are living here, who believe that the world is black and white, who see their conditioned self in this world is the only thing. That their children, it's their children, it's the bloodline, that's what matters, etc., not really connecting to the spiritual body, even though it's been in scriptures for thousands of years. It's like, I look at my father, who's somebody who would look at anything like this as woo-woo and you're, stupid or whatever it is because of his conditioning, right? And a lot of people who are religious can be hypocritical as well. They say they're spiritual, but they seem to be doing things counter to what they believe. So it sends out mixed signals, right? But we seem to be going back around where 2,500 years ago, these scriptures that were all about, spirituality are now coming back full circle. That we're starting to see it actually take shape even more so by these experiences that you're talking about. So it's not about convincing anybody anymore. This is about sharing our truths,
I mean, that was day one. So there were some more days, and it got crazy and crazier and more exhausting. So it was really, really exhausting.
Yeah, I bet.
But anyways, it was the back in that time, the best experience. because it kick-started me like in a different direction. But still, I was going back, and it was still working within me, the divine, like they say, ayahuasca is the mother plant of all plant medicines,
Yeah.
right? And it's working through you a couple weeks later as well. And I really could feel it because I was more centered. I felt really good, basically. But then I felt back to complete normal, like before. But my way of thinking was different. So now, what I've experienced, I have some experience, some wisdom. I can never go back to normal. That's for sure. But I fell back in my conditioning. Okay, let's go to business, build a business, and do all of this, right? So that was actually my first strong experience in the spiritual, in spiritual dimensions. And now, probably I would not do ayahuasca again anymore. Not because I think it's bad, but I started meditating some time ago, and I experienced the same things. Like I can go as deep as with ayahuasca with meditation, and now I see like plant medicines, like for me personally, as a crutch. So I need something from the outside to go deeper, to seek knowledge, to have experiences. If I need something outside of me. So I figured out, okay, I have it within me. Everybody has it within him.
Yeah, you just need to activate it.
Exactly.
Because until you've experienced it, wearing the t-shirt, until you try that modality, how can you activate something you never tried before? You know, I heard like, Tony Robbins or Sadhguru, they've mentioned things like they wouldn't do plant medicines, or, they wouldn't need to do it. But I look at anybody who says something like this, like, at the end of the day, how do you know what you don't need until you've tried it? We're here on this planet to have varied of different experiences, but not to use it as a crutch, like you said, is fundamental. Things like ayahuasca, I mean, I know some people have done it like 100 times, That gets to a point where it can be a crutch. But when you dive into it and you dive out, you're not using it to hold you up anymore. You use it to help you go beyond something that you couldn't get to with a therapist, let's say, or it might have taken you years, or whatever it is. You were called towards a plant, and somebody could tell you, no, you shouldn't do this and you shouldn't do that, but this is your higher self and it's your journey and it's unique. And it may be, I mean, I've done a very different plant medicines myself, because a part of me is seeking to find the truth and go beyond the illusions, and medicine is part of this earth, not to be judged, but not to also use it too much. I mean, even meditation could be seen as a crutch to a degree. If you're using it all the time to escape from reality, you could look at the monks who are sitting, in the Himalayas and they're meditating morning to night. That could be seen as a crutch because they're not willing to confront something within them in the day-to-day life. But at the same time, they're also doing what they need to do to put into the conscious soup, let's say, the positive thoughts or whatever else that needs to be put in there. So it's all within balance. And I think, when you try out these different modalities and you're doing the different experiences like you've tried, and you carry on exploring, each modality is going to open you up to a new realization towards something. And if you're seeking the truth and you feel strong enough that you'll be able to handle whatever comes to you, like you said, you were going to be able to handle your face melting and everything else, and you're ripped apart by rose thorns. My name's Roseman, by the way. I'm not here to rip you open. Okay. Well, let's see. In a beautiful, loving way. But it's all modality, and I just see like, this is what we're here for, to experience everything we possibly can do. I mean, I experienced, it feels like in the biblical sense, in the old days, we had a company called Mischief. And now I'm reading throughout the Bible and the Quran, it sort of talks about those who are mischievous and they're the ones who are going to hell, It's not about going somewhere to hell. It's when you are in a place like where I was when I was young, and you're doing, you're intoxicated, and there's all that debauchery that goes with being mischief. There is an eternal hell going on, And I was going through that, and I was escaping with the intoxication of drugs, but they were drugs, not medicines. But back then, I was using it to escape my suffering, because I didn't have any other way. I had mentors around me who were doing the same thing. You become your environment. So I had a great time going through hell and at the same time having the worst time, until I brought myself to a point where I was starting to feel balance within myself. But I needed to go through this. And, you know, the Old Testament talks about, you know, judgment and mischief and those who are polygamists and things like this, you know, and judged and shamed and everything else. And then the transition where the New Testament is about unconditional love for anybody who's willing to transcend that and not to be judged by their past, you know, because it's the hardest thing is to feel like you are tainted because of your past deeds, because there's shame that's deep down within you, and you feel that whoever was there at that time is holding that viewpoint of you, especially your family, that you can never escape from it. So until you own up to that and speak your truth, or, you know, confront it with love and light, you're always going to be imprisoned by that aspect of your personality or decision that you made that stemmed from a shameful moment in your childhood that sometimes you don't even remember, and that wasn't even yours, but you make it your own, because that's what children do. Your parents get divorced, or a parent dies, you blame yourself for it for some reason, you know. So we take on all those aspects of, you know, everything that happened around us, that it happened to us, not for us as children. So when you transcend and go beyond that perspective, and everything's based on perspective, because once you shift your perspective, your whole life changes. You haven't changed the past. You can't change the past. You just shift your perspective and see the other side. You see the positive of it. And then when you transmute that charge, that energy, it then doesn't need to show up into your present or future to remind you to deal with that lesson, to deal with that illusion, because it's going to keep showing up until you handle it. Resentment, regret, whatever it is. And I said it before, right? You're not going to find somebody who's joyful and happy who doesn't like their parents or holds something against them still, or to anybody. The only way to transcend any and all pain is by doing a different modality, by going on that road, by seeking it and keep uncovering the layer of the onion. It will make you cry. It will make you have to feel feelings that you don't want to feel. And that's why we get into certain relationships with certain people, because we meet somebody that we go, oh, you're willing to keep that emotion behind closed doors as well as I am. Let's not talk about that feelings. We kind of have this subconscious agreement. And then one person is willing to work on it, and the other person like, hey, that wasn't the agreement. And these relationships start to wobble, you know, because we're all looking to hide certain feelings and emotions, you know, behind a mask. Not sure how I got to that point, but you know what I'm saying? This is why we do modalities. This is why we do what we do, so that we need to feel the feelings that we're afraid to feel. And most of us have 3 or 4, 5 feelings that we can count: guilt, anger, resentment. I mean, these are kind of the feelings that we go through, but there's a rainbow color of feelings and emotions that we actually feel until we enhance our vocabulary and learn how to actually share those feelings. They'll be stuck in us, like stuck energy, and they will create illnesses and disease and everything else, and will attract certain people that represent that unhealed version of ourselves to wake us up, because somebody's going to come along and annoy you at some point, and whoever angers you or makes you upset or whatever you feel they wronged you in some way is a representation of an unhealed aspect of yourself. And no man is your friend, but every man is your teacher. And when you look at life in that way, it's teaching you something. You can appreciate them, even if you feel like they've wronged you. And my wife and I have been in a situation that, you know, we could certainly say and have every excuse to be blaming and judging and everything else. And at the beginning, when you first counter the illusion of it, you're blaming it and judging yourself of being under the illusion. Because when you're under an illusion because somebody's done something to you, it's because of an old pattern that was brought to you in your childhood, that this person needed to come into your life in order for you to see that unconscious pattern, to bring it to the light. And you either choose to be angry and hate and say that life is unfair and unjust, and you can stay in that reality, or you see that life is happening for you and you can transcend those negative emotions and everything else, and then you don't need to attract those people or situations in your life anymore, that you can be free and you get to expand, and then you get to change your paradigm completely, and then you go beyond your condition of who you thought you were. Then you're stepping into something creative, unconditionally loving, abundant, where you manifest beyond what you've ever thought you deserved. I went on a bit of a tangent, you know, but doing these modalities and seeing these miracles, ultimately a miracle, because it's unexplainable. I mean, if you said this to somebody, what could a scientist say to you? You know, let me think about that. The reason that happened is no idea. What, quantum physics, quantum mechanics, you know, particles, the slit experiment, all these different things. We're starting to find out that the more we explore it, the more strange it is, and the more that there's a beautiful, loving entity that is governing the universal laws, and it just is what it is, and it's the game of life that we're all playing, you know, which is a beautiful book. I'm glad I mentioned it again. How to Play the Game of Life by Florence Shue, 1925, and she wrote it. Beautiful affirmations. That's the one I said about no man is your friend, but they're your teacher. Right. Beautiful affirmations, and so make sure you get that book if you can. And these affirmations are what help you reprogram and overpower the old programs where there's not abundance and there's lack and there's scarcity and there's pain and you're stuck. Because when you're stuck in that place, in that paradigm, and when you wake up in the morning and you feel like, well, what's the point? I'm just going to get the same thing I did yesterday. Because until you heal the past, you're just going to project that into your future. You are not the creative being. You're just a machine that's repeating the same thing until you wake up. It can be disheartening because I've been there myself, you know?
And that's the opposite of living, actually, right? Because we have all these habits, right? And then we're running like habits. They're good. If you want to accomplish something, we have habits. We don't have to think about it. It runs like it runs us. The habits runs us. So that's good, actually. But it makes you numb. Like it makes you you don't see the entire spectrum. You only see this. So you maybe miss something else. Not saying that habits are bad per se, because if you want to lose weight and you have a habit regime, like if you have habits that promote that, that's a good thing, right? But I think it's very important to break the habits as well, like getting out of the bed and do everything different than you have done before, just to break the old cycles and create new pathways.
Create new synapses. And
exactly.
Well, like brushing your teeth with your other hand.
With the other hand.
Or standing
exactly.
with one leg. I mean, I'm constantly doing something new, and then the new thing becomes something old. So 100% agree with you, man. It's like you talked about it before, habits. The habits control you. It's like your phone, you know? We are like a computer. If you allow your phone to abuse you and use you, you will. And most people's phones use them. They're not using their phone. The phone is like, you say to a dog, you whistle it over. The phone now whistles at you, and you come over to the phone. We become the dog, and the phone has become the master.
Yep.
And who's behind these phones? Technology companies that are worth billions, because at the end of the day, they have your attention. And what's their intention with your attention? Well, you can tell what their intention is based on those who are making the money and what they decide to do with their money. The only way we can protect ourselves and each other is making decisions and where we decide to put our attention. Once we do that, whoever you think has all the power won't have the power anymore. You only give them power because we put their attention there. And it really is a community coming together that's going, you know what? Our intention is to build up the communities around us and help those who need help, and help everyone else to make sure that they're getting reliably good food that is not killing them, you know. It's not about profit over people, and it's about community helping one another, you know. And the only way to do that is having conversations like this, you know, bringing it into light and actually taking action, you know, helping people become aware, because ultimately people are governed by their habits. They're also easily manipulated. You know, advertisements and, you know, easiness with sugar and different foods or technology, distractions, everything else, because they understand that unless you know how to handle this machine, this avatar, they know how to handle it better, because they pay a lot of money to understand who you are and how to speak to you, your condition, to control you. And they do it every time a message comes through or a notification. They got you.
Also, your friends. It doesn't matter who is behind. Also, it matters, but in the bigger picture, it doesn't matter who is behind. The thing that matters is that you're always reacting So you're not initiating, you are always reacting. So if I call you, you react because your phone says, hey, somebody's ringing. So you react, and this will destroy your brain over time.
I think Simon Sinek said it he said it and it made me think about it. Like when you're holding your phone and you're speaking to somebody, but you're holding it like this, you're making your phone more important than the person you're speaking to. It's like you've got a person in front of you, like if this goes off, I'm sorry, this is more important, than the person I'm actually speaking to. So the thing you can do is actually put your phone away and make a point of, no, I'm in control of myself. Nothing's going to distract me from this moment. But people are getting pulled away from their moment even more so. We found it difficult before. That's why we needed meditation. Now we need meditation even more. And this thing lights up our brain wires. I mean, the dopamine and everything else, and even cortisol and the stress, and all from a little device because we can be contacted at any moment. So it's finding that space, especially in the morning, for yourself. For me, it's do the practices before allowing the world into your life. Because if you set yourself up for that success and you're giving it to yourself, then you're saying to the universe, self-love. Ultimately, I'm giving myself self-love where I'm telling the universe I am the most important person in the world. And that's okay to say that. Because if I don't look after myself, how can I look after anybody else? Not to turn the phone on and try to give all your energy so you're depleted. Because ultimately, you're going to invite the universe to send a message to you to wake you up and go, hey, how do we have you to care about yourself? Do we need you to have an illness where everybody stops and now visits you in hospital? It's like, don't wait for that moment. Prevention is better than the cure in any way by just understanding how the universal laws work.
So I experienced it as well. And obviously, I'm not a master in it. But like when it comes to the phone, so what I did is I turned off all notifications, except when somebody's calling, then I can see it, but it's only vibrating. There's no sound. But messages, I will never see it. So if I press here, it's always a blank screen, so nothing. I have to open it up, and then I can see. So that gives me puts me in a position where if I want to look, I look. So that's the one thing. But the other thing is, how do you navigate your attention throughout the day? Not just with a phone, because attention is like what we said, like the currency. And you, with attention, you can create things, right? And then I got into the practical practices of the yogic tradition or yoga sciences.
Yeah.
To be able to regulate your own system by will and not reacting to life. And this changed a lot for me. So I felt way calmer, way more centered, and obviously, it's not working all the time because I'm dropping out of the state what we were talking last time, but still, it's amazing. So I think if I can put a percentage of it, I think my best day was like 70% in the state of like centered and calmness. But it was one day I can recall, and now I just go with the flow, or better say, I try to become the flow myself. To be in that state, and this gives you way more peace. You're not like, you cannot be manipulated so easily because you're centered and you're not reacting in the moment, in the second. So this, I think, is very important for us all in this speedy world, because everything is so fast.
Especially in Dubai, and I say Dubai is like a spaceship. When you're here, everything speeds up, and you have to hold on to your seat because it's one hell of a ride. And we've seen people come here, and it speeds up your karma. It feels like you confront who you are. It's like a medicine being in Dubai. When we're triggered, it's like we don't belong to ourselves. And it's like we have an emotional liqueur. It's like being hungover, when I've been triggered, some triggers are bigger than others, right? When you're triggered by something, you don't know if it's an hour or 5 minutes or a day, and you look and go, what happened? I didn't belong to myself. Some people are triggered for a year. They don't even know. Some people are so triggered still, they don't even know they're not triggered yet. And I was there for a long time. I didn't know I was not triggered until I was about 30. You know what I mean? Because I was operating from the habit, the condition, everything else, that I was unaware of knowing what triggers were. But now when you're in a state of understanding what triggers are, there's the, unconditional loving, there's the one that's not looking to react, the higher self. And then when I'm triggered, Alex comes in. And then for a moment, I'm Alex. I'm, whatever comes in, and everyone else can see it. And then when I'm calmed down a bit, I'm a bit like, here I am on my journey, and I'm triggered. I'm suddenly back to the little Alex again. What happened? What happened to me? And it's those moments to understand that I'm human and I'm still going through my experience, that the subconscious and the body is a powerful tool. It shows you how powerful it is, that at some moment can happen that we go into a stress, fight or flight response, that we don't belong to ourselves anymore. When was the last time you were triggered?
A couple of days ago.
What happened?
Yeah, a couple of days ago, it was, I had to wait again for somebody.
Ah.
I know this is, and we talked last time about it. So if I meet people, like people I know, and they come late all the time, I mean like 70, 80% of the time, that's all the time for me. Whoa, that's like, why do we agree for anything, Like it doesn't even make sense to talk about time. So that is my inner reaction and the inner conversation that is going on when somebody's late. So, but obviously I'm working on that, and I'm way better than before, because I had an emotional explosion like in the past. Now it's like I feel it. I feel the anger coming up, and then I observe the anger, but there is no chit chatter anymore. So I go in my state if I'm not in it. And there is no thinking anymore, but just observing the emotion, like the tension in the body, and it dissolves. So, but I also from an intellect point of view, I try to understand, okay, so that's a mirror. Life is teaching me a lesson, right? What you were talking before, and that's so beautiful because everything can be a teacher, right? And the best teacher is life itself, not a teacher on stage. And even though they're very good and I don't want to downspeak
of course,
speakers on stage, obviously, but life is the ultimate teacher. And because again, it's experience. And then I was like, okay, so how do I feel when somebody is late? Yeah, I feel like this person is not reliable. I feel like this person doesn't respect me, doesn't respect my time. So then the next question is, where am I not reliable to others or to myself? Where do I do not respect myself? So that's the questions. And if you have when I asked the questions, I had answers immediately. And then it was also like a little calming.
A humbling experience.
Even though it's not like the result that you calm down, but it's like, okay, now I cannot BS myself. I mean, I could, but it would hurt myself. I would hurt myself. So, and this process allows me, every time this happens, to integrate the shadow, integrate the trigger point into my life.
But this is why it's so important to do the modalities, learn the tools, because for me, I'd love to not react ever again and just respond in every moment. My higher self is here, and Alex, that, the wounded child and all the condition and whatever else stories is gone, and it's just never there again. And I say thank you, for the journey and the experience, but you don't need to show up anymore. The world is not the fearful place I was taught to believe, that actually it's a beautifully loving space, because that is my reality within myself, because the internal world is a reflection of the external world. Anytime I'm triggered and I feel that moment, that is the moment I create in my reality, because I'm feeling helpless. I'm feeling unsafe. And you mentioned, you asked before about the Marissa Peer. I did the Marissa Peer, and sat down with Marissa Peer, and she did me the hypnotherapy. I had my session, and we went through the different stages, And it's funny how the different memories come up of the past that you don't really think about. And the 4 different experiences. The first one, which was when I was it came to me, I was lying there, and I had a vision in my kitchen. I think I was sucking my thumb at, like, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 years old, looking around. I think my brother was in a high chair, and I'm hearing swearing or like shouting, between the parents, and, feeling unsafe, And the next memory was having hearing issues that the pains in my ears, I had grommets and I was suffering and nobody was coming when I was crying myself to sleep, right? So again, feeling unsafe. Nobody comes when you cry. And another one was when I had pneumonia, a memory, even I don't remember anything of it, but some reason I felt like I was on the bed or cot ill for quite a while before anybody noticed. And then another memory was inside the womb, which I believe my mum had a car accident. And I was sort of inside, and felt something was going on. Not bad enough that I'm not here today, of course. But all of these common threads led to me feeling unsafe, even though consciously I wouldn't have known that. But one of these modalities was to find out that, in this space, if I feel unsafe, that's my familiar home. That's what I've known. So in my adult life, I'm creating situations where I feel unsafe because it's familiar. And ultimately, when we don't explore our childhood and we look at every aspect of our conditioning or our outlook on life, then we're going to keep creating those situations to feel familiar in, even if it causes us pain, even if it sabotages our happiness. I've seen it over and over again. And when you don't confront that, you're just going to create more of what you don't want into your life. And all of this is about this podcast and the work that we do. And, we want to bring this awareness to people so they stop ultimately hitting themselves, They can deal with this deep layer of conditioning to alleviate that, to give that burden to the higher self within and set yourself free. Because we're not meant to have burdens. That's ultimately the plan. And what they talk about, God and the spirit and the soul. We're not meant to have these burdens. The burdens are to be given. And what is the burden? The burden is ourselves. The burden is the burden brought to us by our parents and our parents' parents. That's been brought from the bloodline, the lineage. And they go, we're not the flesh. And when you give that up, that you're not the condition of your mum and your dad, and, all of that stuff, that we're spirit, then we're not under the illusion of all of the burdens that have been passed down unconsciously. Consciously. Then once we give that up, then we're like, I'm not that. I am just a spiritual being having a human experience. Great. Okay, let's play. Now let's create. But it's very hard to do that when you're, I was saying it to, we just hired a new member of staff in our self-love store. Really lovely young South African who's here. She's on a journey of spirituality and she's come and joined our team. And I was saying it's like climbing Mount Everest. You're putting one spike into the next. And it's like when my wife and I were building the new Earth, I didn't know if I was going to be able to stay in the new Earth. We were building it, but I knew in my head I'm not truthful as I need to be. Because if I'm truthful with my wife, because I haven't been truthful since I was like a kid. I mean, I'm truthful. I don't like to lie to people's faces like people we've met. There's some people who are really in their illusion. But I hadn't really been truthful on some of the actions and shames that I've been holding on to. I didn't know if I could ever share that with anybody, But until you do that, you're ultimately never going to be free. So we're building New Earth thinking, if I ever give this burden up and speak the truth in the light, will I be accepted? Will I be loved? Will I be included in the New Earth that we're building? So I was holding myself to account, and every time I was climbing up, it was getting harder to carry this burden. I was like, I might just drop to my death. The higher we're going here in our life, building the New Earth and all these cool things, if I don't step up and come from my heart, get out of my head, I'm going to crash and burn. I'm going to fall. It's going to be the hardest fall of my life. So what do I have to let go of? I have to trust in a higher self. That I have to let go of everything I ever thought was. I had to let go of any preconceived ideas of what love was. That was conditional by expressing my truth with my wife. And when I did that, and she said, and she accepted me and loved me, I was like, all the programs were,
So
deconstructed.
It was a mental prison.
It was just like I was free, and then this Kundalini energy. I was saying before, the Kundalini energy rose up. And this was straight after the Hoffman process in December last year, and I felt my tongue like moving in such a way. I was moving like this, going, "What? Okay, what is going on?" Because my body was moving in this way, and it was the Kundalini energy rising. And even though it wasn't something I practiced, but I was aware of it, of course, because we've got the cafe, which is all about chakras, and so I'm on this journey. But wasn't my thing to really be interested in to understand about the Kundalini, but the fact it just happened and I felt it, I was like, to me, this is another miracle that is signs of some energetic play here. This is not just some philosophy that's intellectual. This is something that is actually governed by an experience that you can actually feel. And the only way I got there is by breaking every paradigm I possibly knew about love, which is expressing truth in the most beautiful liquid nectar way it is. And when you express that truth and you're met with unconditional love, that heals all. It heals everything. And ultimately, that's what we're doing this all for. Every modality, anything, we're on this path is to be accepted and loved for who we are, so that we can dissolve the illusions of any insecurity that we're not enough or we're not worthy. So once we do that, then we're just going to create more abundance in the world, of what we feel we're deserving of. And we're just going to keep getting more of that. So it's exciting to be able to step into that, because, we're seeing it. I mean, be able to have a sit with you here in our cafe, and we can have a bite to eat after, and you had, your morning scramble before. I don't need anything else. I don't need or want for anything else. It's like I have everything I need, and I'm able to sit and have a cool conversation in our cafe that is, feeding the community for those who decide to come here, So yeah, I'm blessed. I'm a blessed man. What can I tell you?
That's good.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I think we all are. All men are, and then the women are blessed women, right?
Well, until you recognize it. Because if you're a victim and you're in a state of paralysis because of your conditions, you don't feel the blessing until you shift your perspective.
That's true, and yet we have the chance to decide, right? But obviously we need to have the awareness first in order to be able to decide. And when you were talking about, yes, I don't have a need, I don't have a wish anymore, also like the word desire. Before I was preaching in my business, you need to have a burning desire to become successful, because if you're not satisfied, you want to move, right? There is something you have to run, and of course you get energy from that, and you can get things done. But if this is your method of operation, like if this is the mechanic, you will end up in a very bad place, because you constantly lose energy. So for the short-term run, it's perfect. You can use it, no question. But it's like, if you know the Hawking scales, it's very low. You lose energy. But if you operate from at least, if pride or acceptance or joy, if you're in a state of being where you don't have a wish, but you decide to do something because you enjoy it, then you're in a completely different energy level, right? And this is how you can operate long term.
Well, yeah, when I was an actor, I had to push myself. I felt like I had to push myself. I was, because I was trying to escape from 9 to 5. I was doing IT recruitment, and it felt like I was swimming upstream. But when I moved towards what I actually felt like was my calling, personal development, then speaking, I was like salmon going upstream. I was pulled. I hit my plateaus because I was still dealing with the conditions and, having to get through the layers of the onion. Breaking through that and just going, I'm going to listen to my higher self completely, because it seems to know exactly what to do. And the further I seek the truth, it's... The more illusions that break, the more truth that comes to you from a source that is not from here, is from yourself. And that will manifest itself in the way that it's meant for you in this time and space now. And for me, it's coming through, and I just need to listen and act on it. Because if it comes to you, and most people wait to act, right? They wait to act. And if you're taking your time to act, then that moment passes, and then you're left with that stagnant, heavy energy, because it never got its chance to bloom like the flower. And it could take months or years till it comes back around again, and you're hitting that plateau, and you wondering why. You're trying to get there. And I've been there so many times in my life, but now this seeking of truth and how it's showing up, and just trusting myself and being okay to actually feel confident and actually be able to express and speak and go, you know what, this is who I am. I'm here, happy to talk, whatever I need to talk about. Is a liberation. And I'm ultimately doing it for myself. You know, you're sitting here and you're doing this for yourself, and it's okay to do it for yourself, because if you're not listening to yourself and you think it's all about other people, because ultimately it is for other people, right? We're doing it, other people are going to listen to it. But if I did it for other people, then I'm thinking what other people are thinking of me. And then ultimately I can't be my authentic self. So the more I do this, the more authentic I'm going to be.
So you mean basically if you do this because you want to have the result and you actually don't like to do it. No, I want to have the result that other people get this information, but actually I don't like to do it, but I have to pay the price for it to get the result.
You're like a martyr.
That's not, exactly. So that's not good, right?
Yeah.
But when you say you're sitting here for fun because you like to do that and get the result, and that's a completely different dynamic, right?
Well, you know, I was doing this before. I said to you, in the studio in our house, basically, in the downstairs basement. It's dark. It's, you know, it's great lighting and everything else, but there's no nature. There's no, you know, it's not like this, where it's like there's a space, there's people can watch. It's like, you know, cool. It's different. And that's what I'm about.
At least you're in the Dubai jungle, so you're...
Yes. I'm actually got the nature around me. I love it. Like, you know, it's all around us, and I haven't got the headphones on. It doesn't feel like, when we were talking about before we were going to mention it, you know, you put the headphones on, I can hear my own voice in my head, which is, it's already enough when you hear your own voice in your head. You don't need to hear it again, you know, in your own head. That when you take off the professionalism of the headphones, you're not wearing the facade of being professional in the studio, because then that automatically invites a facade that you're not your truly authentic self, because you're sitting in a studio. But you're sitting in a cafe that other people were sitting here just before having a coffee.
So this
somebody else was stepping after us having a coffee. We're just in the cafe.
This is actually interesting what you just said with the facade, because actually every human being has 3 lives. So we have like our public life, we have the private life, and we have our secret life. So this everybody has. So the public life is we have a mask. We behave different when we know there is strangers listening to it, right? Or if you're in a business deal, you behave a little bit different. You don't become another person. It's still a part of you, but it's your professional mask. Then you have your private life. Your private life is how you're known by your friends and family, right? And then there is the secret life. Nobody knows about the secret life except you. And we're shifting between these lives like multiple times a day. But then also there is, when we talk about masks, because a lot of people say, you need to disidentify with everything. What is, I think, a good thing to do to get to know yourself? Because we know we're not our body, we're not our name, we're not our thoughts, we're not our emotions, etc. So who we are. So we're a spiritual being, we're consciousness whatsoever. But on this physical planet, as a human being, we are born with a mask. And that's an authentic mask. And I think, that's my opinion, we should express ourselves through this mask. But what I see is, for example, we're born with a personality. The personality comes with talents. So we are born with that specific personality structure and specific talents. Everybody has a different one. So that's not by accident. It's not like an accident. There is a reason why this is. So I think we should express ourselves through it to become the best version as a human being. But then there is something called a character. And the character, we're not born with it. But once we go through life, by conditioning, parents, teachers, blah, 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 we slip into masks. And when the character is not aligned with your personality, you're an unauthentic being. Mm-hmm. And I think this is the problem. So what we have to do is to take the path of authenticity and go back, look at this and say, okay, I don't know if this is even me. Like, for example, I know that in business, I will set this and this goal. Probably it's not even your goal. You just like the goal, somebody else said it, and now you also said, but it's not you, that's a mask, that's a character. And once you go back and look at who you are as a human being, I'm not talking about the spiritual part, then you know, oh, that's not even me, that doesn't fit to me. Now I know why why it felt so draining, that path, because it was not me, it was not authentic. And now, once you go back to your root, you have a chance to build it up again, but in a very authentic way. So this is my thought. I think personality persona means mask. We are born with it, so we have one mask, and we should express ourselves through it, but we have to take care that we don't slip in other masks that are not us.
Beautiful, man. It allows me to talk into the sort of a segue into something we talked about before on the podcast that nobody will ever watch. When I left the IT recruitment world when I was about 26 and stepped into the acting world, and I was saying to you before, look, I'm wearing a mask. I know it's a mask, but I don't know what that even means. Who am I? I didn't have a clue. I thought I was me. I'm acting out as I am. I probably had more than 3 masks, you know. I think some people have multiple masks, and some people have 3. Normal people probably have 3, and maybe some unique people have 1 mask, but it's still a mask to a degree, right? When I stepped away from the IT recruitment and I wanted to be an actor, really I was wanting for somebody to help me get to who I am, because I couldn't get there myself. Because I built such a facade, put such a mask on, that I didn't even know when I was acting or being authentic. I didn't have a clue. I couldn't tell when I was acting or being real. And I went to see, I remember looking through all the different methods, and I told you before about the Meisner method, which is about repeating. It's a repeating process. And this Meisner method, I saw a video, and this guy was literally breaking people down. His name was Simon. And I thought, I'm going to do that. So I decided to do a week intensive Meisner course, and it's, you know, you're mirroring somebody else and you're saying your emotions. You basically say something like, you know, you got nice hair, and you repeat back to me going, oh, I've got nice hair. And you keep repeating sort of what you notice, because that helps you as an actor. But you start to notice these emotions start coming out of you. First it's laughter, then it's anger, and then it's sadness, right? And he'll catch you in the moment, and he'll start asking you questions. And when you're trying to escape your emotions and feelings, you'll swallow, you'll do something, and he'll say, don't swallow. And you stay with it to the point that that feeling, that emotion boils up and needs to come out in such an explosive way. And it was such a unique way and a method of how to bring your emotions and feelings up to the surface, so that you're not wearing your mask when you're playing a character, because you can't play characters with the mask on when you've got your own mask on. You know, you have to be able to remove your own mask. The years and years and years, 1 week wasn't enough. It's taken me 10 years to keep removing that mask. So to the point where we don't need 3 masks anymore. We're just our higher selves showing up in every moment. Not everybody reaches that point, of course, where you can be authentic in a business meeting, into any situation. We're not playing a role anymore. Because when you step into a business meeting, you're playing a role, right? It's like when a waiter comes to you, they're playing the role of a waiter, and you're playing the role as the client sitting here, being about to be served food. Everybody's playing a role, because societally, you know what? A better example, as an actor, when you're on a film set, you have extras, right? Supporting artists who are in the background. And I've seen it. I've been an extra before, right? And on a big film set, you have different people. They say that you're going to be a soldier, you're going to be a medic, you're going to be something else, you're going to be... Everybody puts their uniforms on. No, everybody's a stranger. Suddenly those in the uniform are sticking together, and you start to see they all talk a similar way. The others who are wearing another type of uniform are speaking a different kind of way. The uniforms themselves, and seeing other people in their uniform, they start to form their own sort of entity, a viewpoint, as if they're one. They have a commonality, and they start thinking the same, and they may look down at the other people because maybe they're playing the extra part of being the superior general compared to the ones who are, you know, playing the footman, I don't know, whatever it might be. Everybody's getting paid the same. Everybody's an extra, but suddenly the mask they put on from the uniform, whatever else, they play a different role. And they did the experiment, you know, in the prison. They had the wardens and they had the prisoners. And they did the experiment where they put these people in there and they just put the uniforms on and they just recorded it. And the mayhem that broke out because of the wardens and how they treated the prisoners, even though everybody is the same. because of this sort of fallacy, this illusion that we suddenly go into. You know, we've seen it in the military and wars. You know, history has told us. You put the uniform on. What does that mean? How do people perceive it? You put a nice new suit on. Suddenly, you feel like a different person. We're all stepping into different roles. Do you still want to play these roles out? And I've played a lot of different roles. You know, and I've been a gangster. I've been a schizophrenic. I've played the role of nightclub promoter. I've played the role working in the music industry. I've played the role of speaker on stage. All of these different roles do invoke an aspect of yourself that just want to be explored. But if you stay in that lane, like we talked about in the buffet, you just eat from that one meal, you're missing out the multitude of colors of the different experiences that you have. You're not that one person. You're a multitude of them. It's like we're living a multiverse where you are having a million different experiences and different life forms. And it just depends how many do you want to have in this reality now. And that's the beauty of, I feel like, the experience I've managed to have, that I've had so many different experiences.
Do you think that we can be everything that we want to be?
Depends how much acid you take. I think you can give it a good shot. I think you can definitely give it a good shot. But there's so many more different, there's so many different characters you can be in this world. New ones pop up every minute. You could be a statue on the street. You know what I mean? Like new ones you could explore to be. You know, now I'm going down in the world of yoga and I'm, exploring these yogic things. I could be soon seen as like a yoga person, It doesn't mean that I am that. I'm not the stereotype yoga person, even though I've got the long hair right now. I've done a multitude of different things. And I think when you do that, you then have compassion, understanding for everybody else who's in their role. And they maybe feel stuck in their stereotype, in their role, or the mask they're wearing. And some people will not want to be aware of the fact they're wearing that mask because they feel safe. And if anybody ever threatens their identity, Tony Robbins said it before, men will die for significance. Their identity to what they behold, if it's a religion or if it's their job or whatever it is. When you can let go of your identity, and like I had to let go of being an actor, actor's the coolest thing. And people go, oh, you're an actor, it's such significance. And then you kind of go, what am I doing? I'm stepping away from that. But I get so much from it. But it's willing to let go of this illusion,
Yes. So I think we similar. That we can be everything we want to be, but we should not. Because we should be the best version of ourselves and not like somebody else. That's why we have certain talents and energy lines, and we should be very much aligned in this. So, for example, when I lost my health, basically, so I was talking before about the brain fog, but brain fog was the lightest symptom. So I had panic attacks every day. I dysregulated my nervous system completely, so I wasn't able to do anything, basically. I was just anxious all the time. And before that happened, I was identified with my business. So I was the business owner. I was the business guy. And then, also, the second thing I was identified with was with sport. Because my routine was I got up at 5, then I went to the gym at 6 till 7:30, then I went home and started my first calls. And then I had my last call around 11:30, and then I went to bed and repeated that cycle 7 days a week. Obviously not 7 days like from the morning till the evening, but every day I was working something. So because I was so identified with these roles, but it was not me. And then when the break came, I was like in a hole, I couldn't operate my business anymore. I couldn't go out and work out. So, wow, what should I do? That's the only thing I did. So that was a really a wake-up call of who the heck I am. I was so identified, and now my identification was taken away. So, and then I learned, again, with experience, identification can be very, very dangerous, right? So that's why this identification could be a very, very good thing. And then I learned, okay, I'm more than a business owner. I'm more than doing sports. There's way more facets to me. and become a little more chill, like not too much in one direction, because I tend to like do things in a very extreme way. Now I'm way more balanced, but before it was like, okay, all in or nothing. Like, the people say, if I do anything, then I do it 100%. Most of the people who said that is not true. I experienced in my life, but I was that kind of guy. And for me, it's not good. Now I'm way more centered. I have way more meaning to my life than just building businesses and do sports. Still, I want to do something, obviously, but not in the way I did it before.
You needed to go through this experience to identify who you truly are as you keep having a better relationship with your higher self, right? Because letting go of your identity and how much it gives you and serves you is probably one of the toughest things to do. When you build your house and then they say, destroy the house and then try to build it again. This is something that is scary for a lot of people, letting go of that identity.
That also limits you, right? In the way of thinking.
Well, of course, because then you're telling yourself, you're telling the universe ultimately that if I won't be able to rebuild again, so I have to hang on to this illusion, and I'm willing to distract myself with drugs, sex, TV, whatever it is, to maintain that identity. And we've seen people, especially in Dubai, that are living this sort of significant, driven identity because they're all sort of comparing themselves to one another, because ultimately, the biggest fishes are here, right? Is there anything else you'd like to cover, my friend?
I don't know. Do you have any question?
Okay. When people want to find you, what is it you do now that other people who may be listening right now can go, I'm intrigued, I'd like to know more. What is it you do now that people can get involved in? And, the face reading's one thing I know, but there's many different facets to you.
So I was running a business with blood tests, so blood analysis. So we check people's blood, but not like what you do in a clinic. We check like we get the information, we extract the information from inside the cell. And then we can also see if ingredients, nutrients if they really can go into the cell or not, and if also the waste products go out easily, like the cell metabolism, right? And based on the results, we sell then supplements if the person has like a need for it. If the person doesn't have a need for it, doesn't need our product, keep doing what you're doing. But if he has a need for it, he can order the products, and then after 4 months, he can do another test to see if the product really worked. So if the product didn't work, we would expose ourselves pretty much. So that's a very fair concept for the customers, because they only buy when they need it, when their blood tells them there's something not like it should be. So that was actually the business I was building in different countries with tens of thousands of clients. But then I stopped. Because of all the physical symptoms. I also learned then, nutrition is not everything. Because before I was like, with nutrition you can do so much. Yeah, you can do so much, but we're a holistic system, and if you mess yourself up with your emotions, this is epigenetics, right? Like the food triggers you and changes the way how you changes or influences gene expressions, but also your emotions. So, and if you're emotionally constantly under stress, good luck. That doesn't work out. So obviously, nutrition is not everything, but it's a very, very big part, obviously. So in this business, I'm right now inactive, but I'm not operating, but the business is still operating. So if you have any questions, don't hesitate to contact me. And the other thing is, I was exploring the who I am journey as from the spiritual point of view, but also from a human point of view. And then I started to read people, like based on their face. I can see personality structures, character, talents, if they live in a winning way, in a losing way, and also give like advice, what they could do without knowing anything, not even talking to them, just observing their face, do the translations, and line out, map out, and the complete personality structure. And this is also what I do right now. Yeah.
Beautiful, man. We'll have people obviously message out. Do you still have the blood business?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
That's something that's still going on. How do I give it a go then? What do I do? I click on the link, and you send me a test, and I put some
So for you personally,
blood in it.
we can do it then right after the podcast, and everybody else can just talk about, can just reach out to me on Instagram.
Yep.
Fabian Zierhut is my name. When it comes to the reading, I'm open. When it comes to blood analysis, the nutrition part, then of course as well.
Okay, man, that's awesome. Well, thank you, man.
Thank you.
It's again been a pleasure, and this one will get out, I'm sure. We'll make sure it gets out to the world.
Would be cool.
I appreciate it, man. Thank you for
very
coming
much.
on.
I appreciate your time.